This is Palmer, and this is a Hand of Unity production. Ashes of Creation is a new MMO being developed by Intrepid Studios. Interest in the game has grown recently because the developers have been showing off more gameplay footage. The game had a Kickstarter back in 2017, and some of the biggest backers have taken part in an early pre-alpha test. The first stage of the full alpha testing is due in the summer. Here's what we know about Ashes of Creation so far. It's an MMO with thousands of players able to play on the same server. The limit is expected to be between 8,000 and 10,000 characters on the server at the same time. The developers have promised no pay-to-win elements ever, so you can buy cosmetic items which might change your appearance or the appearance of items such as your mount or your house, but nothing that affects gameplay any other way. The game is expected to have a monthly subscription fee. There are 8 basic classes which are called archetypes. These are the Bard, the Cleric, Fighter, Mage, Ranger, Rogue, Summoner and Tank. The traditional MMO roles, what people sometimes call a Holy Trinity, will be in the game. So that means that parties will want a tank, a healer and a DPS, and maybe a support class such as a Bard as well. But players also choose a secondary class, which means that each archetype has 8 variations. For example, you can choose Fighter as your primary class and then choose something else, such as Cleric or Rogue or Mage, as a secondary class. You can also choose Fighter as your primary class and then again as your secondary class, so you would be a Fighter. It means there are 64 classes in total, but your primary class is the one that matters most. So, for example, if your primary class is a Cleric, then you are always a Cleric, and your secondary class determines what type of Cleric you are. You'll always have Cleric skills, but your secondary class might change how those skills work a little bit, and these changes are known as augments. There are 9 playable races, and your race will have an impact on your starting statistics. Each race will also have unique augments which change the way abilities work. So an Elf Cleric might have the same spell as a Dwarf Cleric, but the spell will work slightly differently for them. Each race also has a unique mount, and some types of armor will actually look different on different races. That doesn't just mean changing to fit their body shape, but actually changing appearance and design. Different races also have different architecture. Building villages, towns and cities is a big part of Ashes of Creation. Ashes of Creation is a sandbox game, and while it does have the traditional leveling system you see in other MMOs, it has many other things to do as well. One of the biggest features is the node system. Nodes are places on the map which have the potential to grow into settlements, such as villages, towns and cities. Players can help a node grow simply by taking part in activities in the area near it, so that could mean killing monsters or doing quests, gathering or crafting. Nodes start off as simple wilderness. There are expected to be 103 nodes on the map, so it's quite possible some of them will simply never develop at all. If they do develop, then there are 5 stages that they go through after wilderness. These are Expedition, which means that a few NPCs appear, Encampment, which means that tents and campfires and so on appear, and then Village, Town, City and Metropolis. You'll actually see these places grow and cities and towns build up in the area. So a place that used to be wilderness might one day become a village or a huge metropolis. As you'd expect, it's quite easy to grow a node in the early stages, and the more developed it becomes, the more activity is needed to make it reach the next stage. Different servers will end up having different maps. One server might have a small village in the same place that another server has a large city. Growing a node from a city to a metropolis will take weeks, and that's assuming that there's a good number of players active in the area to help it grow. Players can buy housing in the node once it reaches village status, and those houses will become bigger as the node grows. So in a metropolis, the biggest and the grandest houses will belong to the people who moved in when it was just a village, although you can also sell your house to other players. There will be a limited number of houses, but there are also apartments which are instants, and that means that there's no limit to the number of players that can buy an apartment. So one way or another, there'll be some sort of housing for everybody who wants one, assuming they can save up enough gold to pay for it. Each node has a type, and there are 4 types of node. You can have divine nodes, economic nodes, military nodes, and scientific nodes. The type helps to decide which buildings a node can have. For example, only an economic node can have an auction house. Military nodes provide class training, divine nodes provide augments for skills and equipment, scientific nodes provide recipes for crafters. Each node has a fixed type and you can't change it. So if you want to create a military city, you need to find a military node and try to build it up. But each region is likely to have different types of nodes in it. They won't all be big cities, and in fact each server can only have a maximum of 5 metropolises, the biggest cities in the whole world. But if the nearest metropolis is a divine node, it's still possible that there will be a military city or town within travelling distance. Once nodes reach a certain level, the people who live there can choose a mayor. The process for choosing a mayor might be different depending on what type of node it is. Mayors make decisions such as setting tax rates and deciding which buildings to build. Once a mayor starts the building process, players will need to gather materials and bring them to the building to complete it. Mayors can also declare wars against citizens of other nodes, but bear in mind that larger nodes automatically turn smaller nodes nearby into vassals. What that means is that the smaller nodes can't make their own decisions about going to war. It means a mayor of a large node, such as a metropolis, might be making decisions on behalf of a lot of smaller nodes in the area. Guilds can become patrons of nodes, which means the guild has contributed significantly to the node's development. Patron guilds get certain benefits, which might include access to special quests, and more developed nodes can have more than one patron. There are also 5 castles in the game world, and guilds can own these. When the game begins, the castles will be owned by NPCs, and you'll have to clear them out in order to claim ownership. This is meant to be very challenging, and basically it's a raid. After that, castles can change hands in guild versus guild battles called sieges, which can take place once a month. The developers say they hope to get at least 500 players on the battlefield at once, and this could increase to 1,000 players, they say. Guilds will be able to recruit allies to help them in the fight, so you won't necessarily need to be part of a huge guild in order to join in with these sieges. Castles can levy taxes on all the nodes in the area that they cover, which will be a large part of the map as they each cover about 1/5 of the game world. Players can also build freeholds, which are standalone buildings you can place outside of villages, towns, city or metropolises. They have to be within the zone of influence of a node, which means they have to be fairly close to it, but they're not inside it. There are a number of freehold buildings you can choose from, such as a blacksmith, a forge, a farm, a guild hall, a stable, a warehouse and others. For example, you can build a farm and breed horses to sell. Or you could build a tavern, where players might be able to get quests, or buy meals which provide buffs to their characters. As I said, Ashes of Creation is a sandbox game, which means gameplay will be quite different to many of the most popular MMOs. You won't be moving from zone to zone with each zone being a higher level. Instead, it's going to be based more on getting to know the area where you live, and that area will change over time. So the same area of the map might have level 10 creatures near the road, and level 20 creatures not too far away in the forest, and then level 30 creatures in the nearby mountains. When you level up, you're not expected to go to a completely different part of the world, you go to a different part of the region where you live. New quests and monsters and world bosses and dungeons and even raids will be created as nodes advance. The more advanced a node is, the more that it will spawn higher level content. It won't be possible to travel around the world that easily. The total world map is expected to be about 480 square kilometers, including both water and land, but there will be very little fast travel in the game. Only a small number of players will be able to get flying mounts. So distant lands really will be distant, and you can explore the entire map if you want to spend the time doing it, but it won't be easy. There's also an underground area called the Underrealm, which is expected to be about 100 square kilometer. Another difference with many other MMOs is that items will eventually break, and if you have a horse, it's going to die eventually. So you don't get your epic sword and keep it forever. Every so often you're going to have to buy new equipment. As part of this, crafting is going to be really important. That includes things like breeding mounts and growing crops, as well as the more obvious crafting such as making swords or armor or potions and so on. You're likely to get an epic crafting ingredient instead of a finished item as a raid drop. But that doesn't mean that everybody has to craft. You can make money other ways and buy what you need. In areas without an auction house, crafters will be able to set up merchants in villages, towns, cities and metropolises, or on a freehold. These are NPCs who act as vendors and sell things for players. Ashes also has a heavy PvP element, and PvP will be possible in pretty much any part of the world, but there will nonetheless be some strict controls. You can flag yourself as a combatant, which means turning the PvP flag on, and that means that you're happy to fight other players. But if you don't turn the flag on, you can still be attacked. If a combatant kills someone who is not a combatant, who hasn't turned the PvP flag on, then they gain corruption. Corruption lowers your stats and increases the chance of dropping items when you die. It also means that you show up on the world map, so other players can track you down. But there are many other chances to take part in PvP without any danger of gaining corruption. These include when nodes are fighting each other, they can go to war, castle sieges, and guild wars. Also, players will need to use caravans to transport large quantities of items, such as trade goods, between different nodes. You can sign up as a defender of a caravan, or you can attack a caravan. So PvP can take place when players are moving goods. We don't know when Ashes of Creation will be released, but it looks like sometime in 2021. There will be more alpha testing this year, so we should learn more about the game soon.